All right, next we have presentation on routine safety, comment across group by Lieutenant Don Bridge from Connecticut Motor Vehicle Department. Lieutenant Bridge is a lieutenant for the state of Connecticut Department of Motor Vehicles, joining the department in 1989.
I think it'll work. I think you'll be able. I'll be able to hear me. If you can't, I'll move back to the mic.
Allow myself to introduce myself.
Oh, Jim has already done it. So.
You're going to need a bigger boat.
So some of the things that we see and we do different things. Obviously, you heard a whole bunch of things that I've done myself, and teaching is a lot of them. What we see in the world in law enforcement up on the highways is people doing stupid stuff. This is a real picture, not from Connecticut, but it's there. So we're going to talk a little bit about things. It's mostly about liability and different things and items that we should be able to take care of. So one of the things, and I've done this a lot to the Connecticut DOT personnel as well, one of the biggest premises that states and city governments get in their head is, let's see if I can do this, is that you're exempt. You're the state, you're the city, you're the government, you're exempt. You're not exempt. Get that out of your head, lose that thought, okay? We're all held accountable. So if something happens, you're gonna be held accountable. They're going to look at it. They may not apply the federal regulations, but they're surely going to apply the state law and everything that you should have done. About all of this, you need to reduce your liability to the city or the state, whatever it's gonna be. Follow the rules. If you follow the federal rules, that's gonna be the guiding investigative basis for whatever has happened, and hopefully it never happens. But if something happens, it goes and something falls off the truck or things like that, they're gonna use the federal regulation as the milestone for what they're gonna hold you accountable for. Because every other business in the state has to follow those rules. That's the guiding premise that goes for it. Mostly what we're gonna talk about is load securement and those different things, because that's huge. No one is exempt from a lawsuit. It goes from there.
There it goes. We don't have audio. That's the point I hear you saying, oh shit.
Obviously, that's an escort of an oversized load. Obviously wasn't secured properly, and it tipped over and caused a hell of a mess. Okay? So that's what some of the things we're talking about, the lawsuits. Here's a case where a City of Nitro, the F-350 truck, the employee changed lanes in front of somebody, something fell out of the truck. They claimed the materials were not properly secured in the bed of the truck and sought compensation and punitive damages, and they all came together. They settled it out of court for an undisclosed amount of money. So the city settled with the person where that load came off of the city truck and figured it out. So they did it undisclosed because obviously somebody had a good argument that what fell out of the truck shouldn't have fallen out of the truck. So there's case law there. So here's some data that goes with it. Data, we got almost 5.5 million crashes, 51,000 of them were a result of vehicle hitting an object other that came off of another vehicle. That's back in 2010. So that's a lot of crashes caused by stuff falling off of vehicles. So what basically I'm going to talk about a little bit is just the general definitions of load securement, some of the things that you should be doing or having your drivers of your vehicles doing. These are some of the basic things we talk about. I don't know which screen to point out. It's probably to my left is easier for me. Aggregate working load limit, what your tie-downs are rated for, anchor points where you hook them to, articles of cargo. Dunnage is things that we help to use tie them down, and the tie-downs themselves and what their working load limit is. So the aggregate working load limit is basically a sum of all the working load limits of the change. That's all together. We have the anchor points. An anchor point is where it attaches to a machine or an article of cargo and the vehicle structure. Different articles of cargo. So you've got heavy equipment, you've got pipes and materials, you have other little vehicles and small vehicles. Those are all articles of cargo. Dunnage, anything that helps protect the cargo, support the cargo, and do different things. So it could be wooden bunks, it could be cardboard, it could be bags if it's in trailers and things like that. Tiedowns. Tiedowns, there's a combination of devices, basically a chain and a binder. That's a tie-down system, okay? Secures and restrains the cargoes and attaches to anchor points. So this is where it comes down to where you need to start looking at the items that you're buying, you're purchasing, you're putting alongside with all of your trucks for the things. The binders, and we see this all the time in our law enforcement part of it, the binders aren't matched up with the chains. So this is a Transport 7 chain, and the binder here should be a Transport 7 with a working load limit that's at least equal to or greater than the chain. Because if one's lighter than the other, it's the lightest one, the lower number that we're going to use in the calculation of the securement. Straps are usually tagged. If there's no tag, there's actually a chart. Okay, there's a chart that we use that we go from there, and this is again just showing a tie down attached to the side of the vehicle, and it goes over whatever the load would be. So basically the tie down is going to go from anchor point to anchor point and have some sort of adjustability to it. It can't be, and I guarantee you somebody does it probably everywhere you're at, puts a machine on, puts a chain over it, backs up so the bucket tightens it up and there's no binder on it or things like that, and then puts a binder somewhere else to tighten it up. That's not considered a tie-down assembly. It's got to be adjustable. Moving the machine or a piece of equipment or load is not adjustability. So it's got to have the ratchet, it's got to have the strap or things to that. Tie-downs, it might surprise you to understand that we see people who tie knots in straps, who tie knots in chains. There's a number of different things that we see. Most of the times we just don't see tie-downs, and unfortunately we see that with the state DOT trucks and the town trucks as well as they drive by us and things like that. So we're going to look at no knots, uses of them. The working load limit, basic, should add up to half the weight of the load. Those different things should be very easy to figure out. The maximum load that can be applied to a component in the system is what the working load limit is. It's what it's tested at, it's what it's checked at, it's what it can do. Normal service life, just like the presentation before where we're talking about when you start replacing things, the same goes for your chains, your tie downs. They get worn. As they get worn, they get less, they lose strength. There's usually an assigned working load limit by the manufacturer, and I would imagine there's technical bulletins on how long the lifespan of those devices are. Those you should all be well aware of. Makes it easy when you don't use any, because looking at it is very easy. So the working load limit usually is from the marking on a tie down. If we can't find a marking on a tie down, we're going to look on the chart and see what the lowest value is of that. There's no requirement for that device to be marked. If it's not marked, again, that table, that's a federal number. The 393-108 is just the federal number. Welded chain gets a rate out of that. I don't think we get into friction mats, into things that you haul and do, but friction mats are meant to go under cargo that might move around inside a van or things like that and help. It provides additional friction so they don't move as well in there, and determining the weight of the cargo is going to be needed. Here's the chart. It's there. You can't read the numbers, but the size of the chain, the tie down, all that is gonna dictate that working load limit. Why do I say that really, even though the rule says you're exempt, why you should follow this? The minimum performance standards is the engineers in North America, Canada, and the US sat down and figured out all the G-forces that are applied to an item of cargo on a trailer or inside a body, and what those forces are, and what minimally a tie-down needs to do to secure that piece of equipment, cargo, or whatever it is from moving on or within the trailer or off the trailer or off the truck. So, and that's just the standards there, 80% forward, 50% to the rear, 50% to each side, and 20% in the upward direction. So, if something were to happen, the engineers can state to this, they don't even need a regulation, that anybody minimally needs to secure to this, and the federal regulation is built to that standard, and that's where it all comes tumbling down, or hopefully not, if you've lost something and somebody got injured or killed. Okay, in addition to weight, we have length requirements, just making sure we have enough tie downs for those straps. Basically, at 5 feet, if it's 1,100 pounds or less, you have one tie down. You add a tie down for every 10 feet of cargo. So if you're hauling 40-foot pipe, something like that, you'll see there's an extra one in the front, because if it's not blocked and braced in the front against the header board, you add a second one by the regulations, and that again is the calculation that would hold that length of a piece of cargo onto the vehicle. So if it were 40 feet, not blocked and braced in the front, it's gonna need 5 tie downs. So there's a whole bunch of commodity-specific rules in the federal regulations. I just pulled out the ones that I think are most appropriate for this audience. We've got concrete pipe, I bet you a lot of you might haul. You've got automobiles, light vehicles, that's things under 10,000 pounds. You have the heavy vehicles, your heavier equipment, that's greater than 10, and then roll off or roll on or hook lift containers. I see them, I know our state, I don't know if we have any in our state, but I know our cities and towns use a lot of those at transfer stations and things like that. So I pulled those 4 things out. Concrete pipe, hauling them out to a job, depending on how much you do for pipe, there's specific rules that cover that. And the number I threw up there is the federal number. You could look at it, but anybody who's hauled any of this type of material, it's like a jigsaw puzzle. Get it laid on there so it's all sitting, get it secured. It's round, it needs a chain. If you're hauling it sideways, the tie down should come all the way lengthwise, and then there's certain ones inside the bells that come in through here that are securing that up. Obviously, the bigger pieces that are hauled this way, there's probably 2 chains on that, one on each side, going down through the middle with D-rings on the trailer, some special items there. There's a load. This is dated, but it's a great picture. I mean, this is from '93. We still find this today. So if I can get somebody to take a good picture with that climbing up on there, you can see, obviously, there's no securement on that concrete pipe. I'm even surprised they even had it, but I think they made it so that it looks good, so they weren't gonna get stopped or something like that. So the light things, everything wheeled vehicles under 10,000 pounds. Basic requirements for these is they need to be secured in the forward and rearward and lateral directions. So this one has the devices right on the wheels. I think this one has it left and right side, left front, right rear type of thing. The car carriers, you see them, they're chained underneath all the way through. A skid steer, front and rear, forward, rear movement. Basically, you're keeping it from moving around on there. This is very basic. 2 tie downs usually can do it under 10,000 pounds. Again, remembering that, so that Bobcat in that picture, the skid steer is probably 5,000, 6,000 pounds, depending on the size of it. You want to make sure if you're using 2 tie downs on it, that those 2 tie downs can hold the weight of that equipment. So you would, working load limit of the chains that you're using would add up to the 5,000 pounds, or at least half of that, because you're using the working load limit that's going from there. So we looked at both sides. Heavy machinery we get into more. That's probably what a lot more places move around. I do know that you drive them a lot more than maybe haul them, but hauling them around, and again, gravity is not a tie down. We see it a lot where they running down the road and there's no tie downs, or there's loose tie downs on it. Basically, I have, so this is a bulldozer that was stopped by me. You can see the tie down here is laying on the deck, and there's nothing on this at all, just driving down the road. Okay, that should have 5 tie downs on it by the rules. Okay, 2 to the front, 2 to the rear, and then go from there. So there's no audio to this. So this comes out of Minnesota several years back. This is a D8, which if you know anything about a D8, D8 is probably 50 or 60,000 pounds in itself. The gentleman's driving a low bed trailer with the D8 loaded on it. He was driving down a 4-lane limited access highway, 2 lanes in one direction. The driver dropped his tuna fish sandwich on the floor of the truck, bent over to get it. When he came back up and eyes back on the road, the traffic has now started to come to a dead stop in front of him. So he did a panic stop. You saw the skid marks and the braking. The brakes were good. It was stopping. They're straight. They're all in line. We look really good. So we have great braking and all that. The problem here is that the driver only put 1 tie down looped through the rear drawbar of the bulldozer to make it look like they had some securement on it. I can only guess, because the driver's not here. He did a great job keeping it in his lane, not hitting anybody else, but as he began to stop, the momentum in that bulldozer just kept moving forward. The loose chain in the drawbar, when you're trying to break a little piece of string, what do you do with it? You make it loose and then you snap it, right? If you don't have any scissors or anything. The same thing with a loose tie down. If it's loose, that machine starts to move, it'll snap it like it's nothing. You saw a marking maybe on the film that said 150 feet back is where it broke loose. Climbed up onto the back of the truck from the trailer and crushed the cab and went from there. Spent a little time with it. He would probably still be here. I've seen crashes where heavy equipment secured properly, the trailer is tipped over, they picked it back up and stood it back up with that machine still attached by the load securement when it's done right. So this is probably specific to maybe some things. So a loader backhoe, by the rules, would need 6 tie downs. 4 on the main body, and every hydraulic device is supposed to have a tie down on it to keep it down. So there would be 4 on the main body, accessory equipment lowered to the deck and chained, lowered to the deck and chained. So that would be 6. And again, the 6 would add up basically to the weight of the machine, or half the weight of the load. So if that's 20,000 pounds, your 6 tie downs you can add right up pretty quick. Articulated vehicles, loaders, scrapers, different things, if they articulate, they should be blocked, or you should use the locking bar that's built with them. Don't let the operators take the locking bar out, because it's a pain in the you-know-what. But it needs to be secured so it can't articulate while it's moving, those different things. Roll-off containers. It probably one of the easiest stops that my personnel have to stop, because the roll-off companies are not very good at this. They have lots of good fancy things to hook them on and do with them. Some of them are built with a little hook where the container has this flat bar, and on the rail of the truck it slides in together and that locks it. Or they use this little device, they hook the cable in there and then they tighten up with the ratchet. Or they use chains, use straps, it's got to be on both sides. Or some of the ones have little air hookers When the brakes are released, those come up and grab into the frame rails and are automatic, so it leaves it to the truck versus the driver to remember to do it. However, if you don't maintain those, they break and they don't work and you have a problem and it's not contained. Basically, that's at the rear of the container, keeps it from jumping around and doing different things.
My mom always said life was like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get.
You're saying, I find it interesting. We're actually really, I know we're for 390 for the whole series of for motor carrier, federal motor carrier and all that for 390, CFR 390. We are exempt for most of it as states, but are we truly exempt for loading?
So under the federal regulation, as transportation performed by the states or any of the governments, so it could be local, federal, or state, you're out of the federal regulation of the book. But every state, at least that I know of, has rules built in it that addresses the equipment, the brakes, the tires, the load securement, thou shall not shift upon the truck. So it's easy for me to say, okay, you're exempt under the federal rule. That's just from the verbiage of the federal rule. Under our state law, for load securement, you have to have it secured. It's very basic, and that's what we would apply. And far too many people start with somebody gets in their mind that they're exempt because of that federal rule, and they forget about the other part of it in the state side of it, but mostly they forget about that they are responsible for what gets put on the truck, that it stays on the truck. So regardless of a law that says something, if it falls off, the driver behind the wheel is going to be held accountable. And one of the things, and I think they do it in Connecticut, they train them, so basically it's pushing it from the state a little bit to the driver who you've been told to do this and you didn't. So now, while we're still liable because you work for us, there's some culpability that the driver's going to hold at that point. You know, and then at least the training you're getting can give supervisors the push to say, no, take the 15 minutes to tie it down to get it. I don't know anybody in the state business, in the town business, that's in a rush to get their product there. Unlike the private industry is, I need my load there. I worked heavy construction, and I worked for 2 different construction companies hauling heavy equipment. One was the prime customer of mine today that I just need you to get it there, and it needs to be there yesterday. I don't care, you don't need to take the time to tie it down. Detachable low bed, no, just crawl the dozer over the side, twist it around, set the brake, and go. Yeah, I didn't work for him long, okay? The other one was, here's your list of things I need moved for 2 days from now. This is what I need moved and ready to be staged, and the job starts in 2 days. Take your time. If you ever crawl anything over the side of my low bed, you're fired. If you don't tie it down, you're fired. And that was the good company, you know. But they're there. They're there. So give them the training, give them the teaching. Don't ever tell anybody they're exempt. The other one we were talking at lunch, the fire service is another one that is just as bad. The police service isn't much farther from that, okay? We don't operate a lot of big equipment. One of the big things we have now is that while the military stuff kind of halted a little bit under President Obama, that's coming back where they give us all the military stuff for no charge. Be careful what you ask for, because usually it's pieces of junk. They're worn out, they're tired, they're meant for the desert. They're taking, if you know what an MRAP is, it's a big armored vehicle. And if you do the big one, it's like over width, it's overweight. And I always ask at least the commanders of the SWAT teams and all that, I get getting the guys to the scene, but at what price driving there and cars that you bumped and everything else because you can't see out of them? They're built to be in the desert. They're built to be out in a combat area, not on the city street. So again, we're just as bad. Well, we're exempt. We don't need CDLs. We don't need this. We can just go. And I tell them they're far from that. because when it happens, they're gonna have to answer to it.
Do you make any recommendations as far as the grade of chain, like a minimum, you all in Connecticut, or?
Personally, I would recommend at least grade 7s, but that's just me. It's really a rule of business practice. It's the hardest thing is when you're hauling multiple pieces of equipment. You know, the company I worked for that hauled, I could be hauling the big dozer at one point, and then I could be hauling the small dozer. So the big dozer is going to take a lot more grade 7 and probably ½ inch, where the small dozer I could use grade 7 3/8 inch. So if you're hauling one piece of equipment only on a trailer, it's very easy to size the chain so you don't have to use 14 little chains versus 5 big chains. So it's really just a business decision as to what's the easiest one. I mean, ½ inch chain is a heck to lug around. Is it easier to put 2 extra 3/8 for the guy who's chaining it down? It's an all call.
So did you, in your career, how many DOT vehicles did you cite, or is that a common?
We never, well, I'll back up. We don't commonly stop towns and city trucks. That's not the mission, the goal. I like going and talking to the DOT because I always have, the personnel are always, they're enforcing something on the public, and the DOT truck to drive by or the town truck, that, he doesn't have anything either. Aren't you gonna go stop him? Well, no, he's with the state. Oh yeah, you're with the state. So, as a matter of practice, no, but when we see them, it's because there's a fatal crash. There's a serious injury accident. So now the questions start getting answered, and it may not be you're in violation of this statute, but you're in violations of this principle to go from there. Knock on wood, I haven't been at one yet that I saw any big violations of anything. Equipment was maintained, the driver was doing what they're supposed to be doing and everything else. But we don't just stop them. I have stopped them and said, go put something on that, because that's just bad. You know?
Well, I think that's where sometimes in reality, yes, that's the word exempt and all that, something the state workers thing. I run into problems with trying to get people to do their commercial motor vehicle inspection, and they think it's okay that it's not done, and they take something out on the road with a trailer and it exceeds the requirement. We tell them you get stopped and cited, but it doesn't happen very often.
No, because we're all in the business, because your business is making sure the roadway is safe for the public to travel on. We take the other side of it, is the public traveling on needs to be going safely, and it's teamwork.
Right.
And most of us get fuel at your garages, and you don't want to create a fight, you know, and so once in a while it'll be just an off-the-side conversation. You need to secure it. That's why it's great to see when we come in and teach, when Maryland's going and teaching it, at least it gives ammunition for supervisors to hold somebody accountable. I'm guessing policies and procedures may exist that you don't run around unsecured, but I could see the war happening if we started to stop them all. But there's not a lot. I see a lot of them are secured, so it's random.
Not only that, but the effect when they walk in the door and give the same training, it's accepted at a different level. You know, because they come in full uniform with their cars and everything. And they stand right up there and tell them, you guys aren't technically exempt. You can manage this at some level.
And maybe you could just talk a little bit even about running our own trucks when you see it because it's an accident or a fatality. What you do with those, our trucks are now subject to inspection. If you want to just go over a little bit of what, you know, when you bring a truck in, what you guys do.
So in the event of an accident, let's see, that was New Year's Day back 2003. I had one that got hit plowing snow, and I went out because I didn't want to call in any of my guys. Let them enjoy their New Year's Eve. Actually, it was New Year's Eve. And basically, we look at it, it's the same manner whether it's Joe's trucking company or the state DOT. It's the same inspection procedure. What's cited at the end of the day may not be a violation of the federal law, because that word exempt is in the federal book, but it's gonna reference state law, and then our state law we'll say it's a load securement thing, it's gonna have my state law statute, and hopefully it has nothing, but if it's a load securement issue, something came off, it's gonna have the state law statute, and it's gonna articulate that the driver didn't secure something in a manner, and that came off, and that's what caused the crash. And likely, at that point, that driver's gonna get cited for not securing it. So it's held in the same manner. Enforcement action is gonna be based on there. If it's a fatality, it may be additional there. They may be held in neglect, and vehicular homicide, it depends on at what level. They didn't check it. I get there's no requirement to do the pre-trip, post-trip, because that's all federal, but if you're not doing that, you're not able to check any of these, the maintenance, preventative maintenance, scheduled maintenance, all that's huge, huge. How do you figure out your cost centers? All of that is relative. I can tell you a large dump truck crash in our state killed 5 people. The owner of the company went to jail for vehicular homicide, Avon Mountain, for lack of maintenance on the vehicle. They didn't do it. Their maintenance record was a whiteboard. Brake job on truck number 8, 22,000 miles. When it came in, the next one, wiped it off, brake check, 32,000 miles. Changed drums in there. And there was no record of having it at all. So at the end of the day, you want those records. The one, you can track your costs, you can track your maintenance schedules, when you can do it, and in the event of a bad, serious injury or fatality, courts and juries, I can preach all day long that everybody is supposed to do X, Y, and Z, but when you say that, and you show a policy that they're supposed to do it, and then you produce documents or some sort of device that you use to do pre-checks and post-trips and all that, that is huge for the driver, and they don't realize the liability they're saving themselves by taking credit for what they're doing and documenting it and putting it down, versus this is just a pain in my you-know-what, and I really don't need to do this because I'm exempt, and they're not. So
we emphasize those pre-post-trip inspections that we're looking at face. And we have a couple of videos were made where some actually went around so they could use it for new personnel to show them this is how you do a post-trip inspection. And the drivers that will communicate the message to their folks are the ones that have been involved in accidents that may not be their fault. When the state police get involved, they pound the records, they completely inspect the state vehicle.
Yep.
Where the inspection's completed and all that, because a lot of times they still get sued in civil.
yes,
Because the state has deep pockets. When lawyers are suing, that's where they go, who has the most money.
absolutely.
And those drivers are the best testimonial for the rest of the drivers to say, you better be sure you're doing all your stuff. You're gonna get poked and prodded in every orifice you have to be sure that you've done everything you're supposed to do.
Yep, and then on the other side of it, make sure you have the policies, procedures in place so that it's all set, it's all there. And supervisors need to follow through with it and make sure. It's just the liability, litigious society.
That goes even with the fleet management side on a fatality. When you need to go to court, you're gonna have that equipment file which will be asked questions on it. And that's why when there's equipment files that don't really have the information that should be on them, and you go to court, you start to see that, you don't look very good. It's very, very bad when that happens. And the other thing, just on trucks that we run into on a fatality, or it could be emergency event or a non-emergency event. If the truck goes over and there's a load on the side of the road, they will pick up every bit of material that was in that mine by the shovel, and there will not be anything left on the road, and it will be weighed. And that's another thing that.
And I can only speak for Connecticut, but there is no weight exception on state and local vehicles in the state of Connecticut. And I don't think any of the other states are any different than that. But again, it's that word gets stuck in their head, they're exempt, and they heap up that sand piles. So you can't see over it, it's dribbling out. There's an exemption in the state law that says you can have stuff drop off of your truck. Yeah, that's called sanding the ice. Although you probably don't use much sand anymore in this world, it's salt and it's chemicals. But that law, okay, why is that? Because we need to make traction for people and make the road safe. Anybody can articulate that all day long, so. There's my email address, my office phone number. That's who I am. If you have any questions, email is great. You can reach out to Jim. He can get a hold of me. Anything I can do. If you're looking for some counterpart in your state, nationally, I probably know my counterpart in all the other states. So the lieutenant from Maine was going to try to meet up with me here, but that didn't happen today. So I thank you for your time. I hope you found it interesting, and stay safe.
Well, goodbye.
Produced by the National Center for Pavement Preservation.